Welcome to the Tim Castle Show, where I talk to courageous individuals doing inspirational things around the world. Now, I wanted to kick things off with an introduction to my new book, The First Domino. It's coming out in a couple of months, and if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur or a founder, this is going to help you land that big flagship client. It's going to help you take asymmetric risk and build more leverage into your sales process. It's everything I've learned packed into a book in a step-by-step guide that you can read on the weekend and execute on Monday. This book is going to be foundational for anyone in sales, business development, or leadership. It's something that's implementable, that can help you understand the EQ, the nuance that's needed, and the actions that you should take to drive big change and move the needle. It's something that I'm very, very proud of. Not only has it got a couple of amazing testimonials, I'll just read you one here from James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy. Most people wait for opportunity. This book teaches you to create it. Read it, apply it, and watch everything change. And here's another one from my friend Will Guidera. A powerful reminder that success starts with how you show up for others. I mean, this touched my heart. Getting these testimonials touched my heart from The First Domino. But more than that, I'm excited about the change that it's going to happen in the world when salespeople, when business development people, when leaders read this book and implement it. I think this is going to start a chain reaction of success in your life. So read it today, apply it tomorrow, and let's tip that first domino. Oh, and before I forget, there's 2 covers. Look at this. This cover is insane. Look at this cover. Beautiful cover. If you're listening on audio, you can't see the cover. You're going to have to go to Amazon or any bookstore to check it out. Get on and crush your first domino. Now let's get on with the show. Okay, Nia, Eyal, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Great to have you. I mean, this show is all about courageous people doing inspirational things around the world. And you are certainly doing that. I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and I saw you speaking at Super AI, and I know you've got 2 books. One is there behind you, Indistractible, not getting distracted behind all the stuff that's there, and the other is Hooked. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to start with Hooked, if we could. The model, right? You've sort of gamified, or you've tapped into consumer behavior and how companies can influence that. Like, I see you as the nexus of psychology, business, technology. Like, you're really in this space, and you do a lot of deep work and insights. Like, I think 10 years or 5 years at least to get that book. And I think with Hooked, can you talk a bit more about the model?
Sure.
What it is, how it works, what are the sort of 4 pillars of that model?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hooked was about how can companies build the kind of products and services that build healthy habits in users' lives. So what I wanted to do was to steal the secrets of Silicon Valley, the companies like Meta and Amazon and Google and Instagram and WhatsApp and Slack and all these companies that are so good at getting people to use their products habitually. How can we steal those secrets to use consumer psychology for all kinds of products and services? So for example, Duolingo, one of my first clients, uses the hook model to get people hooked onto learning a new language. Fitbod, one of the case studies in the book, uses the hook model to get people hooked to exercise. So if we can use the psychology of engagement and retention to bring people back to form healthy habits, that is not only fantastic for the user, if we can hook them on healthy habits, it's a huge competitive advantage, right? Talk about a competitive moat. Building a habit is an incredible competitive moat. And unlike growth, right, you can always buy growth. A company can always spend a bunch of money on ads and drive people to use the product, to install the app. You can always buy growth. You cannot buy engagement. Engagement must be designed into the product experience. And so that's why it's so essential that product designers, if your product necessitates a habit, so if you think about products that are frequently used, SaaS products, any kind of enterprise product that needs engagement, of course, a lot of consumer web products, anything that where you need the user to come back on their own again and again and again, if you don't use the hook model to build a habit-forming product, you're flying blind. You're just getting lucky. And so what I want to do was to look at the world's stickiest products and services, right? The social media companies, the gaming companies, and identify what is it that is common among all those product experiences. And so what I came up with was the hook model. And the hook model is an experience designed to connect the user's problem with your product with enough frequency to form a habit. And a hook has 4 parts, 4 stages. Step number 1 is a trigger. The first trigger is what we call an external trigger. You'll be very familiar with these. The pings, the dings, the rings, anything that tells you what to do next with some piece of information in your outside environment. Those are called external triggers. There's another kind of trigger we'll get back to in a minute. The next step of the hook model is the action phase. And so this is where the habit is manifested. Open the app, scroll a feed, push a play button, check a dashboard. Those are all behaviors done with little or no conscious thought. That is the habit itself. Now, to perpetuate that habit, the third step is called a variable reward. A lot of people in the product industry think, okay, well, if you just give people what they want, that's it. That's all you need. No, not exactly. That for a repeat engagement, unlike, we hear a lot of times about personal habits, right? That personal habits have a cue, an action, a routine. Product habits, and this is why I wrote a book specifically about product habits. You can go buy Atomic Habits or any number of other books about personal habits. But for consumer habits, you have to have this hook, of which the third phase is a variable reward, where there's some kind of intermittent reinforcement, some kind of mystery, some kind of uncertainty around what you might find the next time you use the product. That is the engine of the hook model. And we can talk about various types of examples. The final and most neglected phase of the hook model is the investment phase. And this is where AI is really going to change the game. The investment phase is where the user puts something into the product to make it better with use. Mm-hmm. So unlike in the history of manufacturing, things had to be made mass market, right? And it was very hard to retool things for individual customers. So as Henry Ford said, you can have any color of Model T as long as it's black. Why? Because that was really hard for him to retool a white car and a green car and a blue car. That was really tough. Right. Well, today what we find is with mass personalization, that a hallmark of these habit-forming products, when you think about social media, gaming, these companies, they're incredibly good at making products for market sizes of one. Meaning, if you logged into my Facebook account or my Twitter account or my TikTok account, it's been tailored to my interests based on my past usage, based on my investment of data into the platform. So it wouldn't be that interesting for you because it's been tailored to my needs based on the data I gave the company. So a hallmark of these habit-forming products is that unlike physical goods, right? My clothing, my couch, my car, these things depreciate. They lose value with wear and tear. Habit-forming products, and this is really a revolution, they appreciate. They're the type of product that gets better and better the more you use them because of this concept of stored value. So the more you use it, the more valuable it becomes, which makes it more likely that you continue to use it again in the future. Until eventually you begin to form an association with what's called the internal trigger. That's where we started, right? We talked about external triggers. The goal of a habit-forming product is to no longer require those pings, dings, and rings, right? No longer require expensive advertising and spammy messaging that just annoys users. But eventually what happens when you really know you have a habit-forming product is when you don't even have to send them any kind of external triggers to begin with. In fact, we know that 90% of the time that people check their phones, 90%, it's not because of an external trigger. It's not because of a notification. That's only 10% of the time. 90% of the time we check our phones, it's because of an internal trigger. What is an internal trigger? It's an uncomfortable emotional state that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. That is the source of 90% of why we check our devices. So what a habit-forming product ultimately does is connect an uncomfortable emotional itch to the solution that the product provides. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that by running people through the 4 steps of the hook model, now you begin to shape preferences, you form tastes, and these habits are formed.
So you've really codified it, but there's a level of integrity to what you're doing because you're saying you're only doing it with companies that are promoting healthy habits, and it's really the variability that's the key. Like, so it's something to do with the fact that if it was consistent, we'd get bored and we'd know what was coming, so we wouldn't go back as much.
That's part of it. Yeah.
How does a product keep the variability alive? Like, do you kind of workshop that with clients?
So products tend to fall into 2 categories. Either they add variability to a particular situation and based on the internal trigger, or they operate in an inherently variable circumstance and they're giving the customer assurance. I'll give you a couple examples. This is why we always have to connect the internal trigger with the variable reward. Meaning, if you can't tell me what is the customer's itch, what is their psychological need, right? I ask this question in teams that I consult with all the time and companies I potentially invest in. And I asked them, what's your internal trigger? What's the psychological itch? And they tell me all the whiz-bang amazing things that their product can do. And we can do this, and look at this amazing deep tech, and here's how we use AI, and blah, 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 blah. But what's the psychological itch? What's the consumer need on a psychological basis? Because far too many product designers, certainly engineers, don't understand why we use every product. Like, what is the fundamental reason? Why do we use any and every product? There's only one reason. The one reason we use any product or service is the same. Doesn't matter what the product is, doesn't matter the industry. It's always to modulate our mood. That's it. This is why we use everything, why we buy, why we interact. It's always to feel something different. And so what you want to do, if you're building the kind of product and service that needs to form a habit, you have to articulate what is that consumer itch, and does it occur with sufficient frequency to build a habit around? So if, for example, the internal trigger is boredom. Okay, let's say you're building a media company, right? So you're scratching the itch of boredom. Now, there's lots and lots of ways to scratch the itch of boredom, but all of those forms of entertainment always have an element of variability. So let's take books, right? When I write a book, I always have to write each and every chapter with a mystery at the end of the chapter. That's what makes it fun to read. Certainly in fiction, you want to know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, of course.
A movie, when you watch a movie, you want to know what's going to happen at the end. Movies suck when you say, oh, it's so predictable, I knew what was going to happen. What makes sports fun to watch? It's about the uncertainty of who's going to win. What makes romance romantic? It's all about uncertainty. Certainly social media, if you think about it, right? That scroll of the feed, that has an element of variability. There's uncertainty around what you might find. That's what makes it entertaining. So that's when the internal trigger is that's when the variable reward is adding variability to scratch that itch of boredom. But if the product caters to a different internal trigger, let's take, for example, in the States, Uber, or in Singapore, Grab, any kind of ride-hailing service. Imagine if the driver picks you up and says, hey, I just read this book, Hooked, by this guy near Eyal, really good book. And he says I should insert variable rewards. So I'm not going to take you to the airport. We're going to go on the scenic route, right? That totally wouldn't work. It adds variability, but it doesn't work, right? Or even better, okay, you open up your laptop and it doesn't work. Surprise, right? You get the black screen of death. That's variable, isn't it? Yes, but it doesn't scratch the user's itch, right?
Yes.
So what do I want when I get into a car on the way to the airport? I don't want surprise. I want certainty. Many times, I will call a cab, or Grab or Uber in the States, on my phone, even when there's a taxi cab right over there, because I want the assurance of, I want to know when I'm going to get to the airport.
Right.
So in that circumstance, the internal trigger is uncertainty, and here the app takes an inherently variable circumstance and gives you assurance. Here's when you're going to get to the airport, estimated arrival time.
Different trigger.
Right? So you always have to match the variable reward to the internal trigger. If they don't match, it won't work.
So something you said as well was about the investment, right? So say Instagram, the algorithm's getting better. It's giving you more juice. It's giving you more of what you love and tailoring it to you in a variable format, right? So that's why it's exciting. And we've got the itch, which is boredom. We create the habit. But then to take it one step further, like what happens when we kind of go deeper? Like this is the psychology piece behind it, but 2 seconds. I just got to remember my point.
Yeah, sure.
So what happens is, like, we get addicted. And so the fact is, if the quality of the investment we're making, and you talk about the IKEA effect in the book, and the fact that we're investing time in these apps, right? What is the IKEA effect? And how does that contribute in the lens of like Instagram and what we're being told by society that is a big problem?
Yeah. So the IKEA effect is this idea. It's also called a commitment bias, that when you put effort into something, you like it more. And so it got coined to be the IKEA effect because, when you go buy some shitty furniture in IKEA, it's not very good furniture. But what's unique about IKEA furniture is that you make it yourself. And so this is why, we build it when we go off to university and we say, oh, look at how proud I am. Look at, I made this table. And then we keep this shitty furniture to our first apartment, maybe our second apartment. And there's part of this affinity to something when you helped play a role in building it. So this is what we see online, right? With many products, the more effort you put into it in the right time, if you put the investment phase before the action phase, it fails. And I see this all the time. Products built to ask customers to do too much too soon before the reward. Big mistake. after the variable reward, that's when we ask users to invest in the product to make it better. Customization, adding data, content, followers. These are all forms of investment that store value and make the product better and better with use. Now, you slipped in another question there around addiction. And addiction is a very loaded term that gets way, way, way overused because an addiction, unlike a habit, is something completely different. So a habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. That's a habit. About half of what you do every day is done out of habit. An addiction is a completely different animal. An addiction is a persistent compulsive dependency on a behavior or substance that harms the user.
Right.
So we would never want to build for addiction. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of Near's rule. Any sufficiently good product used by a sufficiently large number of people will addict someone. That's just the fact.
Just the nature of it.
If you build something good that solves pain, if it's an analgesic, anything that solves pain, someone, if enough people use it, someone is going to get addicted. Why? Because about 1 to 5% of the population suffers from this disease of addiction. Addiction is not, ooh, I like it a lot. Okay, and addiction is a pathology. And there are documented cases of people getting addicted to all kinds of stuff. Sniffing glue, huffing paint, eating rubber balloons. Even there are cases in the literature of people getting addicted to water, right? Literally anything that solves pain will be addictive to somebody. Now, it will not be addictive to everyone. And this is the big misconception. Just because something is addictive to someone doesn't mean everyone gets addicted, right? A lot of us have a glass of wine or beer with dinner. We're not all alcoholics. We have sex. We're not all sex addicts. We play video games. We're not all video game addicts. And so why do we think that social media somehow is addictive to everyone? No, it's not. Some people overuse and abuse. Absolutely. It's about 1 to 5% of the population. The rest of us need to put on our big boy pants, look at ourselves in the mirror and say, wait a minute, am I actually addicted? Right? Is this really a persistent compulsive dependency that harms me? Or am I at times distracted? Hence the term indistractible. And when we take a step back and say, wait a minute, where do I have control? What can I do about this? Versus this bullshit media narrative that traditional media likes to tell us and scare the crap out of us, the way they love a moral panic. It's so ironic. We are so fooled. We are so tricked by traditional media who loves this narrative that social media is addicting all of us and the internet is hijacking our brains and look at the social dilemma. It's a puppet. Everyone's a puppet on a string. That is exactly what the tech companies want. They want you to believe you're addicted. The word addiction comes from addictio in the Latin, meaning slave. Like literally, if you could buy a perception among the populace that would benefit the tech companies, it would be to brainwash people into thinking they're addicted and there's nothing they can do.
So they want this narrative to persist. They're happy for
I don't know if they consciously know it,
but it's a good thing for their business.
There's nothing better to keep people addicted than to tell them you're addicted. Whereas what I'm telling people is, you know what? Sometimes it's a distraction, right? It's not an addiction. It's not, oh my God, a persistent compulsive dependency that you can't stop even when you try. Now, for some people, it really is, right? For people who can have a drink or two at dinner versus people who are alcoholics, big difference. Same substance, very, very different. Addiction is not that simple. It's about the person, the product, and the problems they're going through. It's never a simple equation of just the product and boom, you get addicted. But the more we buy into this narrative of there's nothing I can do, right? The less we do about it. It's called learned helplessness. So when you believe there's nothing you can do, what do? Nothing. And so, of course, now the behavior you don't want persists.
And the habit feels too hard to break. And I think that's what I love about your work and especially Indistractable, like the way that the psychology is at the core of this, right? And you're thinking about people first. You're not just, there's a lot in the world that we just willingly accept and we assume that that's the narrative, but you're here to break those silos down and go, actually, what you're being told, it ain't the truth. Right.
And in fact, I think, so traditional media has this imperative. Like one, I was a journalism co-major in college, and the first rule of journalism is if it bleeds, it leads. The news media loves catastrophe, right? We love it because humans, have this bias towards fear. It's called a negativity bias. So good things are nice, bad things will kill you. So we are evolved to constantly be on guard for anything that might hurt us. But that doesn't mean we are good judges of the probabilities of how dangerous something really is, right? If you ask the average person, what's safer, a car or an airplane? Almost everybody will say a car because they're familiar with it, right? But you hear about the one plane crash and now you think airplanes are dangerous. nothing could be further from the truth. Like on a per mile basis flown, airplanes are way safer than taking your car on the highway, right? But we have these skewed perceptions of danger, and so I think when we kind of let the media, particularly traditional media, as opposed to I think user-generated content, which actually we can cater and curate much better than whatever is shoved down the pipes at the New York Times or Fox News or whatever else, whatever else wants to influence us. We can be much better at curating our view of the world. Now, there's also the dangerous side of if you don't actively curate your information diet, you can also get into an echo chamber when you're just listening to perspectives that validate your side, which is also a danger. But I would much rather have a world where we can curate various forms of content. If you look at my news feed, if you look at who I follow on Twitter, I like adversarial collaborations. I like people who are directly opposed to my point of view in many cases, because that's where I learn. That's where I say, the ultimate truth is that life is complicated, that the world's problems are nuanced. And so if there's one thing I'm really fighting against, it's that we don't like nuance. We want everything to be black and white, right? In every global conflict, good guys and bad guys. In every debate, there's the guy I'm for and the person I hate. And that's not real life, right? Social media, evil or good? No, it's nuanced, right? Is social media good? Yes. Is social media bad? Yes. It's nuanced.
Now, that's true. So what does it mean to be indistractable?
Yeah. So being indistractable means you're as honest with others and yourself. You're as honest with yourself as you are with others. Excuse me. And the idea here is that one of the worst things that you could call someone is a liar, right? That's a terrible put down. You don't ever want to call someone a liar. People take that very.
They do. Even kids know. I was talking to my wife this afternoon just before we came here. My son heard me say, "Well, if I say that, I'll lie." And he suddenly, "Daddy, did you lie?"
Right.
I was like, no. Just if I did that, I would be lying, and then. It's such a trigger word. People know
and from a very early age. Right.
That's really important.
The irony is we all know, we learn very young that we shouldn't lie to other people.
Right.
And yet, isn't it funny that we lie to ourselves? At least I used to lie to myself all the time.
But is that because we don't understand the objective reality that you just discussed? Or we're mixed up because so many things are coming in and we're already confused with what's being shoved in our faces?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that we will articulate to ourselves, that we already have made the decision, regardless of where that idea came from. We make a decision to do something, and yet we don't do it, right? How many times, like this used to happen to me all the time. Today is going to be the day I exercise and the day I eat right. But I didn't and I wouldn't. Today is going to be the day I work on that big project at work. Oh, I'm going to nail that project. I'm going to finish it today. 30, 45 minutes later, maybe an hour, I'm still scrolling the news or YouTube or whatever. So the goal of becoming indistractable is to be the kind of person who lives with personal integrity. You're as honest with yourself as you are with others. I find most people, by and large, are pretty honest with other people, but we lie to ourselves all damn day. So that's what being indistractable is all about. I'm not here to tell people, oh, you should take an ice bath every day and eat perfectly and exercise and, no. Anything you want to do with your time and attention. You want to play video games all day? Great, do it. I'll show you how to do whatever it is you say you want to do.
But that's the key point, and I think this is part of your philosophy that stands out from, it's differentiated. It's the point that you allow people to do whatever they say they're going to do, as long as they do what they said.
Right.
And that we don't give it a label and say, that thing is bad.
Right, exactly.
If I eat ice cream all day, if that was planned.
Exactly right. That's the big difference. I think most people out there, and that I only write a book when I have a personal problem that I can't solve any other way. Right. So most of the time I'll write about it to myself. I think writing is a wonderful thinking tool. If that doesn't work, I'll talk to my wife about it. Then maybe I'll talk to some friends about it. Then I'll read every book on the topic that I can find. And if I still can't solve the problem because there's no solution out there, then I really got to start at first principles and the ground up and look at the original psychology research for myself to fix the problem. And that's exactly what happened with distraction. That at first, most books out there say, oh, put away your cell phone, stop using social media. Thanks, tenured professor who wrote this book who can't get fired from their job, right? That's not useful advice. How am I going to stop checking email? Thanks, stupid. That's not helpful. I need to check email. I need to be on social media because my livelihood depends on it. And why shouldn't we? As long as you're using it on your schedule and according to your values, not someone else's, certainly not the social media companies.
This is so cool and so beneficial because you are shining a light and you're out there in the world shining a light for some part of the biggest problem, which is overwhelm and stress. But it's like it's its own pandemic right now. Like it really is. And in the book, and just being involved with many businesses, you can see that high profile people with busy lives that are doing high performers get themselves into a pattern. You do call out a story in the book. I think it's Alice or someone that they're basically a high flying exec, and they showed you their schedule for what they had going on, or they didn't have a schedule. And they literally had all this kind of noise coming in. They had to make $15 million within the next quarter, and it was just a mess. And through your strategy, I think it was time boxing.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
What is time boxing and how does that work?
Yeah, so time boxing is step 2 of how to become indistractable. We can skip ahead to it, but essentially the idea is that you can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from.
That's it.
So that is a critical lesson that I think all of us have to understand. And by the way, I'm preaching to myself here, right? I'm not trying. I had to learn that I was a mess, right? And so I wrote this book. It took me 5 years to write Indistractable. You know why? Because I kept getting distracted.
No.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I learned these tactics for myself, starting with the original psychology papers that show what works and what doesn't, that I discovered that a lot of the conventional advice sucks. To-do lists suck. Horrible piece of advice to keep to-do lists.
Suck? This is good. Let's call it out.
Okay. Well, so we'll get back to time boxing in a minute. Okay. What's the problem with to-do lists? To-do lists, the biggest problem with to-do list is that there are no constraints. There's no constraint to a to-do list. You can add more and more and more and more. Where's the bottom of a to-do list? It doesn't exist. You just add more and more and more and more things to the to-do list. So what I'm arguing, it's not bad to get things out of your brain onto a piece of paper and into an app. That's fantastic.
Yep.
But that's step 1. And what most people do is they run their life just on step 1. Okay, I wake up in the morning, I get to work. What am I going to do? Let me look at my to-do list. Okay, here's all the things I need to do. Do they do the most important thing? No. You know what they do? They do the urgent thing. They do the easy thing. How many times did I do something and then say, oh, I forgot to put that on my to-do list. Let me write it on my to-do list so I can check it off. How stupid is that, right? Because I was part of this tyranny of a to-do list. Furthermore, what also sucks about a to-do list is that because it has no constraints, because it's this limitless list, when you get home from work, after a hard day, you've been grinding all day long, and you just want to relax, right? So few people out there, even high performers, have ever experienced what real leisure feels like. Because even when they're playing with their kids or watching Netflix or doing something that they just want to enjoy without thinking about work, they're always thinking in the back of their mind, oh, there's all those things I haven't done, right? They can't actually decompress. Whereas when you use a time box calendar, now you have a constraint, 24 hours in the day. So it forces you to make trade-offs. A time box calendar eats a to-do list for breakfast because it's not limitless. It has a constraint of time. And so when you fill out your calendar, when you say to yourself, we can talk about how to do that. It has to be done based on your values. But when you do that, now when you say to yourself, you know what? I want time for Netflix. I want time to play with my kids. I want time to play video games. You can do it without guilt. It's actually enjoyable because anything but the thing that you said you were going to do is now a distraction. So one of the best things you can do if you find yourself distracted by too much email or TikTok or Instagram, whatever, is to plan time for it with your time box calendar, as opposed to what most people do. They have a to-do list that's a mile long and a calendar that's blank. But again, you can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. Furthermore, the last reason that to-do lists are so awful is that they have no feedback loop. So we know through studies that people who use a to-do list are far less productive than people who use a time box calendar. Why? Because here's what using a to-do list looks like. Okay, let me work on this task. Oh, that's very, very important. Here I go. I'm going to get started. Okay, I'm going to work on that for 5 minutes. And okay, I'm working on it. And oh, you know what? Let me just check my email real quick. I just want to make sure there's nothing urgent. Let me just check email. Okay. Oh, there's something in email. You know what? I could use a cup of coffee. Let me just go get that cup of coffee. And oh, Janice is at the water cooler. And then, wait a minute. What am I supposed to be working on again?
Yeah.
Whereas a time box calendar, the metric of success is not to finish anything.
Yes. So,
that usually blows people's minds. Wait a minute. I'm not supposed to finish anything? Yes. The goal of a time box calendar, the goal of a time box is not to finish. I hear this all the time. What if I have a time box and I didn't finish? That's not the point. The point is not to finish. Why? Because people are taking this lens of to-do lists where the goal is to check cute little boxes all day. That's how I measure my self-worth, right? Cute little boxes. Terrible. Rather, the right strategy is to say, I measure myself based on whether I was able to stay focused, to not get distracted for as long as I said I would, working on the task I said I would. That's it. It's not did I finish. It's did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction. Then you can say to yourself, okay, I worked on this task. Let's say I put in half an hour, whatever the case might be. How far did I get? A to-do list can't give you that. So you can say, okay, I have this presentation. It's going to be 30 slides long. And look, in 1 hour, I did 3 slides. So that means I need 9 more time boxes to finish the task. A to-do list can never do that for you. So time boxes eat to-do lists for breakfast. It's just a far, far better technique. And I didn't invent it. It actually is the most studied time management technique out there that nobody likes doing because they think it's too rigid. But let me tell you, it is a life-changing practice. Unless you're, I don't know, a child or retired. And actually, I used to say that all the time. Then I got an email from somebody that says, no, retired people need time boxes even more because they need some structure for their day. So essentially, if your life is hunky-dory and you're achieving all your goals and you think you're living to your potential, maybe you don't need it. But if you know you're capable of more, like I used to be, right? I knew that I could be a better father. I could take better care of my health. I could be more productive at work, but I was constantly getting distracted. A big reason why is because you're not keeping a time box calendar.
Yeah, this is going to help. I coach people, but this is going to help so many people because they even though they know these things, or even though they've heard maybe of putting things in calendars, until you actually understand the reason why, and the big part of that was not focusing on the outcome, focusing on the time.
Exactly.
Did writing a book help you do that? Because I know from sitting down and writing, you can't write a book in 5 days. It doesn't. It takes years, right?
Yeah,
and that means that you have to only focus on the time and make time for it.
Right.
Do you think that helped you to make that discovery?
So I love my job because I get to learn for a living. Right. That's what I love about it. And so I only write about problems that I had when I was looking to start another company. And I thought, okay, well, it needs to be a habit forming business if it's going to succeed. Where's the book on how to build habits? I couldn't find that.
Yeah.
And then, so I found lots of books on personal habits. I didn't find any books on product habits. And that's why I wrote Hooked. Same with indistractible, right? I kept getting distracted when I was with my daughter, when I was, taking care of my personal health, with my wife, with my work. I kept getting distracted. And so, in fact, I got more distracted after Hooked was published because now I had all these requests for my time. Before I wrote Hooked, nobody knew I existed. But then as my book got successful, now I got invitations to speaking gigs and consulting and investment opportunities. And the one thing that made me successful, the writing, started to slip because I wasn't focused on that. I kept getting distracted. So that's why I embarked on this area of research. And it helped in every area of my life. I'm 46 years old. I'm in the best shape I've ever been, even though I used to be clinically obese. Yeah, I used to be clinically obese, and I don't even like exercise, but I do it for the first time in my life. I do it consistently because I said I would. Right? I'm fully present with my daughter because I said I would. She knows that she can count on me. I have personal integrity with her. I'm not checking my phone when I'm with her. I'm fully present. When I do my writing, which I love, now I can actually do it and have output that I'm proud of because I can sit down and actually put in the input.
So cool. And I know, even knowing and preparing for this conversation and knowing that you had that moment with your daughter that you were like, it was a special moment, right? And you sort of missed it because you weren't focused and you were distracted. Right. I literally had that today. My son found a feather and it had this beautiful green streak on it, but I was checking my phone, I was on email, I knew, and then I was like, it's happening. The thing Nia said is happening. It's happening right now. I'm missing the moment. Yeah. So I caught myself. I was like, no, but it does just show that and I think you do call this out very strongly in the book, but does your calendar reflect your values?
That's right.
There's so many quotes, but I love that because that's what I can see, and it flows through you, is the guiding principles of these philosophies comes from a values-based lens.
Exactly.
So that you're acting in integrity with yourself.
That's the big picture. What's the goal of all this work, right? Like, why did I write this book? Why did I need it in my own life? It's because I didn't want to look back on my life with regret. That's what I'm trying to prevent. The very few people have actually experienced it. And you can always kind of tell when someone utilizes the book because there's kind of this glow about them when they actually put it to work. And you can tell they've experienced this high of, here's what I said I was going to do today, and I did it. I would have liked to do more. Okay. Every 24 hours is not enough. I go to bed every night and say, oh, I don't want to go to sleep. I want more time. But to look at your day and say, you know what? Given my limited time in the day and my limited time on earth, I spent it according to my values. I spent it the way I wanted to. And so I wanted more of those days, more weeks like that, more months like that, a lifetime of that. So I don't look back and say, I missed it. I should have spent more time doing something else.
It's the choose your life piece. It's right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Control. You've got the control because you've put the structure around it. And in controlling it, you've actually got freedom.
That's right.
And you get to, and you're controlling where those attention goes so that it's your life.
And that's the irony here, that people think, oh, if I time box, I'll be too rigid. I won't be able to be spontaneous. I need to be flexible. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. that when you add constraints, it's like a sandbox, right? If you back up a dump truck and you dump a bunch of sand in a field, well, it's just a bunch of sand in a field. But if you put wood around that sand, now you've got a sandbox, and kids love to play in that sandbox, right? That's where we get the joy of creation.
Constraint.
Is when there's a constraint.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that comes up a lot is that people, they almost have, you get the vision. We've got the big vision for our life. We plan out our life. We know where we're going potentially and what we want to achieve. But then the micro detail comes in, and it is just such an influx of things trying to grab us. And I think it does go back to your hook principles. Like it's almost like you wrote Hooked, and then you gave us the book to get unhooked as well, but in a healthy way.
Right, to different products, right? We
Completely.
want to get hooked to the books or the
healthy
apps
stuff
that help us learn a new language or exercise more, but we also want to disconnect from the things that don't serve us.
And that's why this is so powerful, because there's almost more stuff that doesn't serve us than ever before. But in the book, you also say that we've been distracted for many thousands of years. So
Absolutely.
How do we reconcile this? Like, because it's not like the world is going to get less digital,
Right.
less complicated. Like,
Right.
it's and the demands. Like, there's 3 layers to it, and we can jump into this. But in the book, you talk about your relationships, and then work. But work seems to slide into like to all encompassing.
Right.
How does someone, if they're sat there and their work is dominating completely, and they're just in this cycle of pain, I'd say they're in this cycle of pain and overwhelm, what are the steps they need to take to bring it back, to get control and to feel alive again?
Yeah. I think we underestimate the role of control. That when something becomes our decision, it completely changes our perspective. I'll give you an example. So, if you're on a flight and there's a bit of turbulence, people freak out.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable. People hate turbulence.
Yeah.
And yet we'll go to Disney World or something, and we'll go on a roller coaster, and we'll pay for the privilege to be rocked up and down.
Yep.
You think about crime. Oh, terrifying to have an axe murderer in your neighborhood. And yet we'll go watch a film about an axe murderer because we love that feeling of fear.
Sure.
It's because we're in control of it. So there's nothing wrong with focusing on your work. If you want to work 24/7 on your career, do it. Who am I to say you're a bad father or that your career shouldn't be first? If that's what you want to do it. But do it with intent. So if you say, that's my priority, that's what I want to do in my life, and this is my schedule for that, do it without guilt, right? Which is why we shouldn't moralize and medicalize people's behaviors. Why is video gaming somehow morally inferior to watching golf on TV? Right. There's no difference, but you don't see people saying, oh, we're all getting addicted to watching golf on TV. No. Have you watched people, if you go to a bar during the Euro Cup,
right,
and you try and turn off the TV, tell me those addicts won't cut your head off. They absolutely will, right?
There'll be an axe murderer.
Right? Exactly.
Yes.
So I think anything it is that you say is a priority, that you want to do with your time and attention is fine, but it has to be planned for in advance. Why? Because if you don't, you will look back and regret. The bad thing happen. The cost of this is if you don't say, I want to spend this much time on my family, this much time on myself, then this much time on my work, and you let one area dominate, then you're letting somebody else's values guide your life. And they will exploit you. If you don't plan your day, somebody else will. The media has an incentive to exploit your time and attention. Your boss has the incentive to exploit your time and attention. Your kids, hate to say it, have an incentive to exploit your time and attention. All these things, it's not nefarious. It's just the way the world works. Like if you're a person who is valuable to others, they're going to want as much of your time and attention as possible, right? What that means is that you just have to be judicious about how you allocate your time. And so how do we do that? Where do we start? We start with our values. What are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So what this means is, so I give these 3 life domains. It starts with you. You're at the center of these life domains. You can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of other people. You can't make the world a better place. So starting with you, I want people to look at their calendar for the week ahead and say, how would the person I want to become spend time taking care of themselves? If exercise is important to you, not that it has to be, but if personal fitness, health is important, is it on your calendar? If reflection and rest is important to you, is it on your calendar? Do you have a bedtime? My daughter, when she was much younger, I told her, honey, it's time for bed. You have to go to bed. You passed your bedtime. And then she looked at me and said, Daddy, do you have a bedtime? She was absolutely right. I was a hypocrite, right? We all know how important sleep is. Yeah. We as adults also need a bedtime. Now I have a bedtime. Yeah. If reading is important to you, if meditation is important to you, if prayer is important to you, if playing video games is important to you, great if it's on your calendar. The next life domain is relationships. So we have a loneliness epidemic in the industrialized world because with the increased secularization of society, and I would consider myself pretty secular, but it came at a cost. We lost out on those institutions that put time in our calendar to be with people who care about us and who we care for.
Right.
The church group, the Kiwanis Club, the local civic organization. People, our generation isn't a part of that stuff. And it's got to come back because this is what's causing this loneliness epidemic. And so be a part of those organizations. Make time for your best friends, especially when it comes to men. Men statistically have way fewer friendships than women do not because it tends not to be that men get in big fights with each other and then they say, we're not friends anymore. No, friendships are not killed. They starve to death, right? It's, we haven't talked in a while. And if we were real friends, we probably would have cut up by now. So maybe we weren't real friends to begin with. It's okay. I'm fine without them. And that's what kills us. And literally.
You kind of think that you can pick it up where you left off as a man. I feel
more
like
than you think.
You feel like you could do it. We'll rehash some old stories. We'll remember the feelings, how we used to feel. But actually, there's a gap.
And people think, especially men, they think, it's got to be like some big thing that we do together, right? Like men don't go out for coffee and chit chat with each other. Like that's just not what we do. But we can, so they think, we have to like go on a stag party or we have to like plan some big event. Even if it's just a quick check-in. So I have two really close friends from college, Zach and Travis, that when I was doing this research, and I looked at the statistics on how terrible loneliness is for our health. Smoking and obesity are actually less statistically dangerous than loneliness.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look, it's, risk adjusted, lots of caveats there, but it is lethal. Being lonely is lethal. So what I did with Travis and Zach, I said, look, I really value our relationship, but I can see it slipping away. How about we plan half an hour every month just to check in, right? And that's what we do. So the second Tuesday of the month is Travis, and the third Sunday is Zach, and we have Jeff, and we have that time to check with each other just to shoot the breeze, see how we're doing. Sometimes if it doesn't happen because we're busy, no problem, we'll catch up next month. But it's on our calendars from now until eternity, and it's made the biggest difference.
It's a huge value, and you can see that. Like, I can see how until this point in time it hasn't been discussed. This isn't, especially in male relationships, like you said, because you don't go for coffee. You do plan an amazing adventure, but it's not practical to say we've got to climb Mount Everest if we want to hang out. But that's what
but
comes
even just
in
a quick check-in, like, hey, how's it going? What's what's going on in your life? What's the goods, bads, the uglies? It makes a huge difference. But because it's effort-free, because it's on the calendar, we don't have to have this awkward email exchange of, well, how about this day? How about that day? Nope, it's on the calendar. By the way, we talked about we talked about relationships. We didn't talk about work. So the work domain is where people start, but I actually think it's where we need to end. That after we put in time for ourselves, for our relationships, then we plan time for work. And work can be categorized into two kinds of work. We have what's called reactive work and reflective work. Reactive work you'll be very familiar with, right? This is reacting to emails, reacting to notifications, reacting to taps on the shoulder from your boss.
Not me, man. I got your book.
You're lucky. But most of us know what that feels like, to have that constant reactive work. The trouble, everybody has part of their day, at least some of their day, spent doing reactive work. It's just part of work these days. The trouble is that many people get habituated to doing reactive work instead of thinking. Right? I don't want to actually think, is this important? I don't actually want to think about what's strategically the right thing to do right now. Let me just check email. Email will tell me what to do so I can feel productive. Again, back to those internal triggers. It's that salve for that uncomfortable feeling of uncertainty. I'll look at email. Email will tell me what I'm supposed to be doing right now. That's ridiculous, right? You're working based on somebody else's priorities and values. As opposed to reflective work. Reflective work is the strategizing, the planning, the thinking, the kind of stuff that can only be done without distraction. And if you don't make time in your day for reflective work, even if it's 30 minutes, an hour, it doesn't matter, just some time in your day for reflective work, to work without distraction, I promise you're running real fast in the wrong direction.
Man. And it's like these systems that we come to rely on. Like, I know with email in the book, again, you're saying like 25% of the emails shouldn't have been written and 25% shouldn't have been read. So 50% of the stuff that's coming at you really didn't need to be there.
So true.
And you need to put those brakes on, thinking about, I love the piece about writing the email. And I do this. I write the email and then sit it in the draft box, maybe overnight. And then I reflect. And then I see if I'm going to send it. So just slowing down the pace.
Right.
And refining. And then sometimes the problem's even been sorted.
Most of the time, in fact. Yeah. So that's part of this technique around what to do about email. It's in the third step around hacking back external triggers. You're absolutely right that when you let emails marinate, right? When you stop playing email ping pong, and we've all played this, like if I get it out of my inbox, put it in their inbox, right? That's my job, is just to ping back and forth and back and forth. No, the point of email is to get work done, not to send more emails. So it turns out if you actually ask yourself the most important question every time you read an email, the most important question is not what is in the email, it's when does it warrant a reply? When does it warrant a reply? If it doesn't need a reply at all, easy peasy, archive it, delete it, never need to see it again. If it does require a reply, when does it need a reply? Does it need a reply today? Is it something that needs to be attended to today? Or can it wait sometime this week? And so the technique that I propose and that I use every day is having a label that says, okay, for each email I get, I'm only going to touch it twice. Why? Because where we waste time in email, it's not the reading, it's not even the replying, it's the checking and rechecking. That's where we waste time. Oh, let me open that email. Okay, what does it say? Okay, the next email. Okay, wait, what was that later on? Okay, oh yeah, what was in that email again? That's where we waste time in email.
That's the piece.
So the rule is you only touch each email twice. So the first time, when does it need a reply? Either never, delete, tonight, in which case or today, in which case I have time in my schedule. Not right now. I have time later to reply to all those urgent emails. Those are about 20%. Statistically, about 20% of your emails need to be replied to today. The other 80%, turns out, can be replied to within 5 to 7 days, turns out. So the magic happens when you let those emails that don't need a reply urgently, the ones that need a reply sometime this week, when you just let them sit. It's exactly what you said. About 50% of the 80% of emails, people figure out their own solutions. They find a different way to solve the problem. It gets crushed under the weight of some other priority, and you didn't even need to reply in the first place. Whereas if you were like, look at how productive I am, I'm answering all my emails, as soon as they arrive in my inbox. Turns out you were wasting time replying to those emails when most of them, about 50% or so, you didn't even need to reply at all.
That's huge. You just saved 50% of 80%, so 40%'s gone.
Yeah.
Just from that. So I saw you do a keynote at Super AI, and it blew my socks off because it was great. And like, how is AI going to help us with these bad habits and kind of habit formation? And just what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. So let me start with a little caveat that I hate the term AI.
Right.
Because everything and nothing is AI. Right.
Sure.
And some people say, well, we've had AI since we had calculators. That's an artificial intelligence. What is intelligence? Intelligence is the ability to solve problems. So we've had artificial intelligence for a very long time. Some people say, no, you don't understand. That we still don't have AGI, so we don't have AI. Right. I don't like the term. What we have right now is LLMs. Right. That we do. Yep. We have large language models, and they're amazing. They're absolutely incredible. I don't have a good sense on how far away AGI is, and even that term bugs me a bit because people think AGI means artificial consciousness. That's what we really are saying when we say AGI. We're saying artificial consciousness, but there's a huge difference between intelligence and consciousness. And I just don't know. I don't think anybody, frankly, knows. Are we anywhere near the precipice of artificial consciousness? Because we don't even know what consciousness is biologically.
For ourselves.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Like we have a really tough time defining whether dogs and cats are conscious, right? They're sentient, but are they conscious? Tough to know. Some animals we think are, but we have this test where, we'll put a dot on an animal's head and then the animal will look at themselves in the mirror and it turns out orangutans and dolphins recognize that dot and they do something about it. So they understand that they exist. Whereas most animals, like a dog, will try and get the thing off the dog in the mirror as opposed to understanding it's them. So we have all these approximations of consciousness, but I get the sense that we're pretty far away from artificial consciousness. So, okay, that's that.
But I like that you call that out. Again, very, very near-esque. You're like calling out, going, this stuff, forget all of that. It's just jargon coming at you.
Right. So, but if we just talk about what exists, LLMs, and increasingly improving LLMs, I think it's a super exciting time. I think it chills people out a lot because it's AGI is much scarier than LLMs. And for LLMs, okay, what's the good, bad, and the ugly here? So the bad is that what we're going to see is this age of what I call contingency. So contingency is this idea that the two parties adapt to each other. If you think about like a mother and a child. So you have kids, right?
I do. I have 2 sons.
Okay, 2 sons. So for me, when my daughter was born, one of the most amazing moments wasn't actually the birth of my daughter, which I was present for. The most amazing, like that's crazy. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
But what even more blew my mind is that the instant that my wife held my daughter and tried to feed her, suddenly her breasts became milk machines. Like what the, how did that happen? Like just in an instant. Why? Contingency. The baby changes the mother and the mother changes the baby. That's contingency. We are going to see that throughout technology. Right? We're going to have this contingent relationship of user changing product, product changing user in a way that's never happened before, with a kind of velocity that's never happened before.
I mean, technology and us, humans.
Exactly.
The contingency between us both.
Because of these AI LLMs that we see today.
And the genie's out of the bottle. It can never be put back in. That's almost like once that happens, it's not like you can stop it. So it's happening.
And that's a golden thing. That's a golden age. It has a lot of potential. Now, the downside is that the world's going to become a lot more distracting. Because if you thought the world was distracting before these things, right, between virtual reality and augmented reality and everything that happens in reality, I mean, this is just going to make entertainment on steroids, because it's going to be catered to a market size of one in much longer formats, right? So you're on TikTok, the algorithm can take existing videos and feed them to you based on your previous behavior, your dwell time, did you like something, right? That's pre-existing content that's shown to you based on your previous behavior. In the future, content will be made on the fly just for you. Yeah. So that's amazing, right? That's contingency. So that's going to make everything even more engaging, which means if you don't have the toolkit to be indistractable, you're screwed. Like you're in big trouble. And I think the world is already bifurcating, but even more so between people who will allow their time and attention and their minds to be controlled by others, and people who stand up and say, no, I am indistractable. That's why I think it's the skill of the century. We have to teach our kids how to do this, because if you don't, it's just going to be too good. There's just going to be too many good things to entertain you. Okay, that's the scary side.
Yeah, but that's massive.
It's massive,
You're saying, like, if you were a high performer today, your job to become a high performer in 5 years is going to get harder. So there's going to be more people slipping off and not being in high performance because you've got to get this toolkit if you want to retain. Well, the kind of battle is on. The battle for your attention is on.
Yes, but I would almost liken it to literacy, right? If you were illiterate in the 20th century, that was a real disadvantage, right? Like you were screwed. And that's why the world has made so many strides in helping more and more people become literate. More people are literate today on the face of the earth than ever before. That was something that was only reserved for the aristocracy. Well, now most people can read, and so I think that's what this skill of becoming indistractable would become. In the short term, we're all going to be razzle dazzled by all these amazing things, but I think the people who learn how to manage their attention can take a step back. They will learn these skills just like we learn to read. Learning to read is pretty tough, right? Like it's a hard skill to learn. Right? If you think about all the cognitive processing, it's not natural, right? We don't, right? Yeah. Vocalization is probably something that we evolved to do, but reading is pretty complex. So becoming indistractable is equally complex, but it's a skill set like any other. So if you are that kind of person that is indistractable themselves, teaches their kids to be indistractable, I think the future is yours, because you'll be able to put these tools to work to your advantage, where other people won't.
That's so cool. I love that nod to literacy, because you're saying that it's a skill that we will all pick up eventually. It's just how fast you want to get there.
Right. And I think we're already seeing a big part of that. I mean, I'm trying to be a catalyst for some of that.
Right.
We already see it when we see, I remember when I used to teach at Stanford, the first few years, this was 2013 or so. And I remember like half my class would be on their phones in the middle of class. Right. And now 11 years later, whenever I teach, nobody's on their phones. It's amazing.
Really?
Yeah, nobody's on their phones when I do a lecture, because people know it's kind of rude. No, that's not true. You know who's on their phone? It's not the young person. It's not the Gen Alpha. It's not the young person. It's the big boss. It's the boomer, right? Who wants to show everybody, look at how important I am. I have to check email all day long.
I've got so much going on.
Right, and they haven't gotten the memo. Right, they haven't gotten the news that's kind of a rude thing to do. Whereas younger generations have kind of picked up on what we call social antibodies, this resistance to things that are antisocial.
Oh my goodness, I thank you for going into depth on that. And
my pleasure.
Just the exponential age of AI and how it's going to...
Actually, there's a lot more we didn't talk about in terms of, you asked the question like how AI can help us. You want me to jam on that for a minute?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So this is what I talked about at Super AI. I think the potential upside, and this is super, super speculative, But we've all seen her, and I think that's an example of life imitating art. I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley are driving towards that future where we have a little person in our ear that is our companion. And I think that's an interesting vision of a friend. Okay, and that's like basically what her is all about. Is like this lonely guy who now has an AI girlfriend. I actually think the more likely scenario, because we're pretty good at being friends, right? Like humans, if we're around each other physically, and we can make friends. I think what we can't do that AI can solve for us is to finally put space between the impulse and the behavior. That's really hard for humans to do. Like we're really bad at that. If you see that plate of truffle fries in front of you, it's really hard not to eat. In fact, I shared this, but I'll share it again. I met a guy who, I won't mention his name, but this guy was phenomenally successful, right? Started a company, super athlete. He climbed Mount Everest twice. Wow. Okay, climbed Mount Everest 2 times. And we're chit-chatting, and I'm just in awe of all, this amazing willpower of, the grit and persistence to climb Mount Everest and do all the things he's done. And the waitress brings a plate of truffle fries, and this guy says, "Oh my God, I can't resist. Give me those." Right? Like he has the willpower to climb Mount Everest, but he can't resist the truffle fries. And so that I think is an opportunity. Kryptonite. Right? Will there be an age where there's like a Jiminy Cricket, in your ear or in a glasses or some kind of new format that can process quickly enough what you are seeing and what you are hearing to almost be your conscious, to almost be that Jiminy Cricket of, hey, look, I know you said you're on a diet. Here were your goals that you told me. Eating those truffle fries will mean you won't have as many calories left over for dinner. Like there's lots of questions on how that might work, but that's an example of how we can actually use AI in behavioral design in a way that I could potentially be the killer app. Lots of caveats, right? Privacy, manipulation, lots and lots of caveats.
Right.
But this, I've talked to people who are in this space and who are making different form factors, and they're telling me that something like that is possible within a year's time. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah.
That's mad. And it kind of builds on everything you've been, I can see the 3rd book coming now, man. Yeah.
Well, I'll invest if somebody can make that.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, so what are you doing now and today, and how can people get involved with the work that you're doing?
Thanks. Yeah. So the best thing to do is check out the books. If Indistractable floats your boat, if that's something that you're interested in, it's available wherever books are sold. Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. If you're into product and want to learn how to build stickier habit-forming products, check out Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. And my website has a lot of resources on it. I publish every 2 weeks, so you can kind of follow my journey. I'm writing a new book. It'll be probably a year away in terms of publication date, but you can kind of follow my path as I blog the book, and you can check out my blog at nirandfar.com. That's spelled NIR and far.com.
Well, we've loved having you here today. Thank you. You've helped thousands of people today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.